What's up, everybody? What's up, everybody? It's Frederick Douglass Bussey back with another edition of Power Lunch. This is episode 83. I'm super excited for the guests that we have on with us today. And it's really bright in here for some reason. I'm trying to turn this light down a little bit. Okay, there we go. All right. Okay. With that being said, I'm super excited for our guest to be here with us today. If you're watching this on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, you're in for a treat. Make sure you like, subscribe, follow as well. If you are not yet following us on YouTube, LinkedIn, or Facebook, please make sure you do so because it's going to be an incredible experience. We want to make sure that you're always being notified whenever we go live and whenever we have another amazing guest, as we do today. This guest has an incredible story. I can't wait to have her share it with you. She's an incredible person. Just love what she's up to, love everything about her spirit, and I think you're going to really be amazed and super excited. So with that being said, Power Lunch starts right now. All right, welcome back to Power Lunch. For those of you who don't know, Power Lunch is sponsored by my book, Breaking Orbit, Rip Out of the Regular by Unearthing the Power Within. And for those of you who want to discover your superpower, how you can discover what it is about you that is uniquely powerful and your gift for the world to be able to create more impact, more freedom, and a lifestyle that really resonates with yourself and those that you love, no matter where you are, who you are. So many people are stuck in this idea of their own identity and what that really means. And so I really encourage you to go to Amazon and check that out. Breaking Orbit, Rip Out of the Regular by Unearthing the Power Within. We're also sponsored by my free Facebook group, 7-Figure Circle $1 Million Mastermind. For those of you who are 6 or 7-figure entrepreneurs, you're scaling your business and you would like to be in a community of support, we've got a ton of free trainings, free master classes. We just did an amazing master class around video marketing over there last week with Juan Archulero, and it was an amazing experience. People are really raving about it. So much so we're gonna do another one coming up here real soon. So stay tuned for that. But if you're not yet a member, then check out the 7-Figure Circle $1 Million Mastermind Facebook group. You can go search that or just go straight to my profile on Facebook. And the link is there in the profile picture. All right. That being said, I want to get all the preliminaries out of the way because I want to add in our brand new, I caught her catching a glass of water, our guest for today. I like to read people's bios when they send them, but hers is so extensive and her story is so amazing. I want to allow her to introduce herself a little bit. We talk about who she is, but she's an entrepreneur, a mother, a philanthropist, a global icon, I would say, in terms of her impact. If you don't yet know her, I believe that in some way or form or fashion you should, and the world will get to know her for the amazing work that she's doing and the amazing human being that she is. With that being said, I want to welcome Aalia Lanius to the show today. Aalia, thank you for being here on Power Lunch.
Thank you so much for having me, Frederick, and you're amazing, and I appreciate it. You know, as I like to say, it takes one to know one. And, you know, so thank you so much for that amazing beginning intro. Yes, I am an entrepreneur. My story of how I got there is kind of interesting, but I am in this version of myself today. I'm the founder of Unsugar-Coated Media, a 501c3 media production company, and we look to create social impact through storytelling and events and things that we produce and create. I'm very much aligned with film and social impact and documentary style type of products, as well as just, well, to be candid, I feel like a lot of my work just speaks to survivors of trauma through the content that we're creating and the lives that we're impacting. And, I'm also a mentor. I mentor other young creatives coming up in the world, learning all these things new and saying, okay, how do I direct this? How do I understand messaging? How do I learn my own story? And so that's a lot of the things that Unsugar-Coated Media does, and we're so honored to do. And of course, I get to collaborate with incredible people like yourself.
It's funny. I was on your website and I saw that you saw the episode with myself and who's the other person on
Jason Jimenez.
Jason Jimenez. I said I had JJ in my mind. It's like, wait a minute, it wasn't Justin, it was Jason, a really good friend of ours. And we actually met, all of us, collaboratively through Clubhouse. Kate Hancock and Dan Robbins, $1 Million Mastermind Room, and that's been an incredible experience. It's getting to know so many amazing people from that part of the whole pandemic experience, right? But out of that birth these great relationships and things like that. And one of the things I've always been amazed by you is your generous spirit, and your heart for people, your compassion for others. I want to talk about all the full package, the entire journey. But let's talk first about the origin story of young Aalia. Where were you born, and what was it like for you coming up as a young lady?
So first of all, I'm a Cali native through and through, and I think that this has actually become more important of my own origin story as I've started to uncover it. And I say this because, I'm a brown girl from California, and all my life I've been asked, "Where are you from?" And I
Mm,
always say California, and I get the look of like, "No, no, no, where are you really from?" Right? Well, my family. If you're driving in Los Angeles and you drive down to Staples Center, it's on Figueroa Boulevard. My family has been here in Los Angeles since that time. I'm actually a descendant of Jose Figueroa, which that street is named after. My family was a great pioneer family in California. And
wow.
prior to becoming part of the United States, Jose Figueroa was one of the governors. And shortly after he passed, California went to become part of the United States. So my family's been here. I've been here. And I say that to preface that my family was very multicultural, but I think they were also confused in their own identity, what that meant to be this longstanding kind of, pioneer. And of course, once California became part of the United States, all these pioneer families that had built up and given the land, they largely lost their fortunes. Okay. So
Mm,
here I am raised in a family that's very much trying to be American, very much trying to be, considered American, even though we'd been here for 200 years. And that just created a lot of struggle, I think, internally with who we were and who we are. And then when I hit teenagehood, Frederick, I just kind of became even more confused, right? I was a young girl, and I think that's kind of natural. And I ended up homeless. I did not agree well with my family. There was a new lack of emotional intelligence to certain things that I was going through. I've since learned that it's usually the rebel, the black sheep of the family, which I was often called, that are the ones who are the empaths. They're the ones seeing the problems with what's happening in the family, and they resist it. And I was that. So I entered adulthood very difficultly. And I say this to kind of go into how I became the entrepreneur. My origin story was surrounding a lot of trauma. I endured a lot of things: emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse as a child. And so from 14 to 18, I was finding my way. I ended up in jail for inadvertently stealing a car, which I know you've heard that story a couple times. Um, but I was, there, looking back, it's a funny story, and actually it's quite innocent. But all the fear, all these things that I had, all the victim mindset that I had prior to that experience existed. And what happened is, once I was in jail, and once you recognize that your freedom is very, very precious, I came out of that not only with a record, but such a desire to prove the world wrong, to prove the world that I was not another statistic, to prove the world that I had this genuine person inside of me that was intelligent, was driven, and was smart. And so that led to me starting my first business at 22 years old, Frederick, not just because I was driven, but because I was not going to allow a little question at the bottom of any application to determine my level of
mm,
success. Does that make sense? So that's where I
mm.
left the victim mindset, or started to leave the victim mindset behind, of why me and why is this happening to me? Instead, I took it as, what do I need to change and what can I do differently?
So you said a couple of things there. First of all, your family history is amazing, but I think also the fact that you talked about identity, right? And I think it's a theme that probably we'll discuss a lot in this conversation. What it means to really understand who you are as a person, your true identity. But you were talking about the fact that when you were younger, you butted heads with your parents, essentially. Um, and prefacing that with the idea, do you find that maybe there was a sort of a victim mindset that was plaguing your thinking when you're younger? I mean, and I want to give the teenage version of you a little grace, right? Because when we're young, we don't know it all, whether we think we do or not. We have a certain perspective. Um, some people never grow out of it, but you clearly had a moment where you said, I'm going to make a pivot. Now, what I'm curious is, do you identify now, looking back, that there was sort of a victim mindset that was keeping you kind of shackled to a certain path? Or was it that maybe there was just a shift in perspective that you needed to make in general?
So the first part, I absolutely can now look back and see that I was in victim mindset. And I think for a lot of teenagers, like you said, giving teenagers grace, like people who want to judge me now, go ahead. I was a kid. I didn't always make the right decisions. I didn't always understand, and of course, and I mean, I say my family didn't always do the right things. Of course, I'm a parent today. I'm a grandmother, for goodness sakes. I know I haven't always made the right decisions, but I say that and I had a lot of things happen to me. I mean, look, as a young girl, Frederick, you have children. I have 3 daughters of my 4 children. Between the ages of 4 and 7 years old, I was molested by 5 different men, not to trigger anyone. And I apologize, but I'm going to, just say that only to say I had some people have so much trauma occur in their lives when they're younger that I almost don't see how you can't at some point just have a phase of at least that victim mindset, right? I think that's the grace you
Mhm.
allow somebody to say, if you have unresolved traumas, the scar of that is still going to persistently be, irritated or just not fully healed. So yeah, absolutely. And then as far as, the shift, yeah, I mean, part of it, I think, was part of my journey, my destiny, in that sense that I feel I stepped into my purpose, that, okay, I now understand. I had lucky girl syndrome much earlier than I realized. I say that right now everyone's making the lucky girl syndrome a thing, but it was funny because it got me thinking. I've always, or for many, many years now, I've walked around going, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. But there are still sometimes these things that I'd say, or people would have conversations, but this and this and this happened to you. You got cancer. You were homeless. You were in an abusive relationship, right? All these things that you can point out. And I'm like, yeah, but I survived cancer. I got out of that toxic relationship. I'm no longer a child, still being victimized by pedophiles. So I say that to say I'm so lucky, right? And I
Mhm.
think that, as we evolve in time, and for me, my evolution has genuinely been my revolution. Every step, you and I
Mhm.
both know, Frederick, we're going to change every 10 years on our mindset, our belief systems are going to be hopefully upgraded, like you said, because yes, not everybody grows. Not Some people are still trying to use a PC from 1990 instead of using the most recent technology that we have because they refuse to upgrade their belief systems. And I think that
Right.
that's super critical and has been super critical in my journey.
For those who don't understand or maybe never heard the term lucky girl syndrome, can you kind of break that down and how that has related to you and your journey?
Well, it's interesting because an influencer I recently saw on IG had has said, like she started to say, well, I'm so lucky. I just get lucky things because I say I'm lucky. But
Mm.
anybody who knows, the universal laws of nature and spirituality, or understands manifestation and things of that nature, part of it is gratitude. It's like they're calling it lucky, I call it grateful. And as a result of being grateful to the universe, good things happen for you. And or even when, it's interesting because people always talk about Murphy's Law, right? Murphy's Law, it's such a bad thing. Oh, I was late. Well, Murphy's Law. But what people don't understand is that the real true gift of Murphy's Law is the way that we're challenged in those moments, the way that we can grow,
Mm.
the way that we can see things from a different perspective. I have a funny little story I have to tell you really quick, talking about like the lucky girl syndrome. When I was younger, my adopted sister and I was picking her up from work. I mean, we're both young working girls. We were living paycheck to paycheck. And I guess I forgot to put gas in the car. We didn't have enough gas to get home. And I'm driving her back. And just as we're about to we're like a mile from our exit, uh, the car runs out of gas. She's in heels and a skirt. I'm in heels and a skirt. We're in gravel and we're pushing this car along the freeway. It's like 9 o'clock at night. And she looks at me and she's like, this is so bad. And I looked at her and I said, this could be really worse. And she says, how could this be worse, Aalia? And I said, it could be raining, right? Like it could be raining. So it's always about that perspective that we have. And so lucky girl syndrome, which is like now all catchy, which I get it. It's good to put great philosophies out there. But many of us have actually been existing with that, knowing that when you view yourself as grateful and you act grateful, good things happen. Would you agree?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that because the idea of luck is that it's random, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which
Mm-hmm.
means that, so I kind of talk about this when it comes to like living a life of purpose. Like everybody has a purpose, which means that we're all special in our own way. But that specialness is not like the fluffy special snowflake. It's that you have something powerfully specific for you to do. And when we are ungrateful, it makes us focus on all the negatives and all the ways that we're not special, right? Or comparing other people and saying they're more special than us or whatever, right? But what happens when you recognize your own specialness and you are grateful for the things that happen to you? You find gratitude, you're able to focus on the things that are all around you, that are blessings, the things all around you that are specifically there for you to be able to take in and to be able to share. And then you can see yourself as a blessing to other people. You can be grateful for that. Gratitude, essentially, for me, is just an awareness of what is great, awareness of the beauty of the universe that God gives us. And then when you are aware of those things, what happens? Bodenhofer syndrome, where now you start to notice those things all around you. And so there are opportunities that are there waiting to be found in gratitude. But because we're not grateful, we're not noticing them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Like if you
I'll,
look at
and
the
I'll,
sign
I'll
behind me, what is the sign behind my head? Sorry. When you have
mhm.
when you love what you have everything you need, right?
I think that's
And
amazing. Yes.
and something that you said earlier, not to interrupt you, pardon me, but you had hit on it earlier, and even how we all made that connection during the pandemic in
Right.
Clubhouse. And I know you've heard me, maybe you might not remember, but I used to always speak about this. I experienced something previous to this, very similar, when I went through having cancer. When I had
Mhm.
cancer, at one stage, I was in a hospital bed. So, mind you, the first part of my journey, I didn't really tell anyone. I didn't want anyone to worry about me. I didn't know how to reach out to people. I was raised very like, my family was conservative. Your friends are not, people you're not family, and you can't trust
Mhm.
people. So anyways, limited beliefs, right? So I'm laying in a hospital bed and I reach out through the Wi-Fi to a cancer group for young adult survivors or young adult cancer fighters on
Mhm.
Facebook from a hospital bed. And immediately through that connection, people reached back to that hospital bed and helped me fight for my life, literally, right? And then
Mhm.
afterwards, we were friends. We'd collaborate. We'd go to conferences together. We'd watch each other's families grow up. Some of us, we also buried some of our friends. It's like this real connection was established, though genuinely through the similar trauma that we were all experiencing, right? There was this level of, we all understood what's, to some extent, what each of us were going through. So fast forward to the pandemic, when the same thing happened, and similar to cancer, you can't go outside, you have to be careful with everything. Like, I mean, when I was sick, my kids couldn't be in the same room with me if they got sick. Like all these same precautions were something genuinely I had already experienced before. So it was no surprise to me that through Clubhouse and all this collective trauma that we were enduring, that we found a place and that we connected. And many of us continue, like Kate and Dan and yourselves and us, we've continued to keep those relationships going, because in the good way, this collective trauma has bonded us,
Right. Right.
so it is the perspective that we look through. You said it so beautifully. And and having that awareness, that it's not to say that you're not upset, because I think I'm so grateful. But can I tell you, as an empath, and as you talked about why I try to serve the community so much, it's because I feel the pain too.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. I think even so, what's interesting about what you just said is that being grateful allows you to also be who you are. Like when we're ungrateful, we kind of want to be a different person. We want to have different things than things we have, right? Kind of alluding to the sign you have when you love what you have, right? So loving what you have, being grateful for what you have and who you are. Now you're not you didn't decide to I don't want to be an empath. You can lean into it. And now you're able to serve people more fully because you can feel their pain. You're not dismissing it or medicating it or just trying to cope with it. Um, and I want to pull on that thread a little bit more, but I want to kind of go back to the point in which you were homeless, right? And I want to focus on that stretch between when you were 14 and you started your first business at 22. What was that experience like for you being homeless, being without your family? What did that do for you in terms of actually setting a I don't know if like maybe a counterweight or counterbalance to everything that you built and everything you were able to endure and overcome after that point?
Oh, thank you for asking that. And, and especially giving me opportunity and reminding to share that what that was like and how it felt. So first of all, I want to encourage any parent out there that even comes from kind of that, traditional mindset. My mom had the saying, if you don't want to be here, you don't have to be. There's the door, you can leave, but just know you can't come back. And I'm a
Mm,
parent, and listen, I mean, when my kids get to a certain age, I will say, thankfully I have a 26-year-old and I have one that's 17, he's about to be 18, and actually he's now an OC. So I have a 15 and a 6-year-old left. But my point is, when the time comes, they're always free to go. But the door will always be open. I will
mm,
continue to be the mom I wish I had, because with that, that very my family almost had that mafia mentality of like, you're either in or you're out, right? And once you're
mm,
out, you're cut off. And you're not just cut off from your mom. I was annexed from my entire family, or like, excuse, I was just there was this very collect, and I was raised with my mom's side of the family. My mom and father divorced I didn't even know they were ever married.
mm,
And so I was raised strictly with my mom's side of the family, very authoritative, very, not little sexist, but yeah, like, misogynist to a good decent amount. But more specifically, just being a child, I was always told I was seen and not heard. It wasn't even about, like, my brother would get told the same thing. You're a child, you're to be seen and not heard. So just that
mm,
was very unilateral, right? And
mm,
I I was sleeping in a Kaiser ICU waiting room. I was very scared. I was very alone. I was a 14-year-old little girl. I remember stealing a pack of No-Dos from a convenience store and taking it back to the hospital. And I took the whole pack. And I went into the chapel that was in the hospital. It was in the ICU room, or in the IC area. And I just fell asleep praying and crying and asking God, why? Like, why? Why did I have to be born into that family? Why did I have to be in this circumstance? Well, when I woke up, Frederick, vomiting, and as I'm vomiting, I'm like, I just very clearly remember saying, I'm not supposed to be gone. So I may not like what I'm doing right here, but I'm not gonna go. Like, I was like, okay, I'm supposed to be here. And I ended up finding a family that took me in. I got out of that situation. And look, it was still very bumpy until about 15 years old, when I did enter a church's women's home. They actually only took women, but because when I did land in the church, we're in a Christian church. It was full gospel, non-denominational here in Los Angeles. And when I went into that church for those next few years, though there were very extreme things about that church, I will tell you that the foundation of the relationship with God, with a higher power, learning things outside of myself, just having an open mind and an open heart, it did allow healing. And it did
mm,
allow me to get stronger, right? Um,
mhm,
because I had stories like Job and Solomon and David, and I had in Jesus, and I had these stories of people. I needed more, by the way, and I think that that's where the conversation of the examples that we have for young people need to be, more modern, more related to us. But which is where learning about my own history comes into play. I'm learning about the power of my own lineage, and I'm like, wait a minute, hold up, right? So, anyways, I struggled. I struggled though emotionally, and then again, about 18, I started kind of, though I was still making some like mistakes, but I will say there was just a point when I recognized I really had wanted the love of my mom and dad. I had wanted the validation, but I didn't need it. So I think I just started to step into, Frederick, this part also where I understood I didn't need other people's validation necessarily. I kept working with this belief that there's something inside of me, right? Like I just felt that people were looking at me and they weren't seeing me. And and over time, I just learned to bring her to the surface so that people did see her. And it's wild now when people say I walk into a room and they're like, you exude confidence and you exude this and you exude that. I'm like, okay, because when I was younger, I did not have that. I walked into a room and I was still operating with the belief that I was to be seen and not heard. And all I can tell you is I'm really glad that I was able to get away from that belief system.
Mm. It's funny because there are so many things that we are, especially when you come from a Black or brown family, right? There are just certain traditional ways of parenting, certain things you just kind of get. And I've heard that so many times myself, right? Children to be seen and not heard. And it's funny because if you can't be heard, can you really be seen, right? And that's really the foundation for so many, I think, issues that a lot of people are dealing with, because so many people go through life feeling unseen and they lack their own voice. And I see that you do that through your work and your businesses and in your own leadership. I can see it in the way that you lead your team and talk to them. So I'm curious, in that time, right? You start to realize that you want to make this shift. Uh, Entrepreneurship is a different sort of a leap. So there's pivots in mindset, and then there's pivots in terms of entire trajectory. What what made you get started into business, and how did that all come into being?
So as I had shared, I think the first thing, well, okay, so let me step back. I will say I had one amazing thing from more than one amazing thing from my biological mother. Even though I don't have the strongest relationship, I absolutely can see the value of the things that she tried, and she was a businesswoman. She was an entrepreneur. So for me, I was born in 75, in the 80s, to have a mom and sitting there at her office proofreading her brochures for her. And by the way, I would always catch errors that the printer didn't even catch. And they're like, at one point, my mom said, I'm just going to have you proofread them before we send them to the printers. And it was funny because it gave me that little feeling of, okay, I'm contributing, right? And I was sitting in the car, to any person out there who has a kid who does not think your kid is not watching how you do business. I watched my mom go put flyers on cars for her business, right? I watched her sit in her office. I watched her with her secretaries. So I had this representation that a woman could do business.
Mm,
So when I went through my challenges, and along the journey, a couple things I learned about myself is I was a great salesperson. And I don't know why people don't like salespeople. I know why some people don't like salespeople. But at the end of the day, you often don't like salespeople because they're trying to sell you something. But the
mm,
world is it's a trade organization. I will never fault somebody for trying to earn an honest living. You can't get mad
right.
at somebody who is legitimately trying to do a job. If you don't want it, fine, great, say no, right? But the next time you're at the mall and somebody tries to hand you something, don't be rude, acknowledge, thank you, but no, because that's somebody just doing an honest day's work, as opposed to what we don't want them doing, which is going out and robbing people and stealing stuff and doing corrupt things, right? So
Mhm,
respectfully, I think because I was always very honest, and I had this very honest approach in the way that I did sales, I just excelled. So I always had a job. Like my first job at 14 years old, Frederick, this will make you laugh, was for an all-state agent who knew my mom. He said, I will give you a job because you're your mother's daughter. If you're anything like her, I'll hire you. So it's at 14 years old, 14 and a half, I'm sitting there in his office at like 6 p.m. which is dinner time back in the day when we all had landlines. And I'm going through his book and I'm calling his clients, offering them additional insurance products like boat insurance, motorcycle insurance for his people. And I'm sitting there asking people, would you like to get a quote at 14 years old? So it helped me to know that I at least could do anything. I could do anything that I really wanted to, so long as I put my mind to it and I was willing to learn and do the job. So when it came to, so then I got in trouble, right? And previously I had had other people leverage me and my ability to be a good salesperson. So I decided, why would I not be selling for myself, right? So I started out kind of, you know, I did kind of two things. I worked in medical and then I worked in entertainment. Obviously, we all love entertainment and it's fun. And it's, you know, I was an A&R executive for a record label. And then I did my own consulting and worked with different artists and DJs. But traditional mindset, I can't be flying all over the world when I want to be a mom and get settled down, right? So I always kind of had this medical background as well. And so it just, you know, it gave me options. It gave me opportunities. And I largely started the business, like I said before, because for me, I learned, you know, I am going to have to build the table I want to sit at. I am going to have to create the opportunity for myself. Again, stepping away from the victim mindset, you know, stepping into the fact that I am capable. I made because look, and I'll tell you this, as a young entrepreneur, of course I made mistakes. I definitely didn't always, you know, you're trying to grow. You teach these amazing business classes on scaling and the mistakes, and people don't often, you know, so trial and error is how a lot of us have learned in this journey of entrepreneurship. We learn very quickly the line is not linear. So yeah, so I took it to that. And then, and just for your audience to know, actually with Metro PCS, the cell phone company here in the United States, I was one of the original dealers with them. My ex-husband and I, we were one of the original dealers. We actually had owned the #1 store in all of LA market for several years. And that's huge. And I remember the CEO of Metro coming in one day and saying, like, what is it that you're doing? Because our #1 store was in Compton, California. And I said to him, it is the way I do business. It's the way I value my employees. It's the way I value the community in which I do business, as well as my customers. That is why we are successful in this community. And you know, I mean, I think that everything that we've talked about before is like why I do business like that. And I love that I can do business that way, because, you know, in between entrepreneurship, I've gone to work. There was one time I sold my company, went and worked for someone else because I wanted them to pay the bills and not me, you know. And then I would see greed or mismanagement or things that I didn't like in that leadership. And I'm like, I can do better than this. So let me go do it, right? I remember now why I like working not only for myself, but being a leader in this community.
So was the Metro PCS, that was the first business that you started?
No. My first business was, my first business was a music entertainment consulting. So I did campaign management for artists. So when the artists used to come into town, like they'd come into San Francisco, and I'd have the entire itinerary of Frederick. We'd take them to the warehouse, you know, we'd take them to the mall so they could do their signatures, and we'd take them to the record store, then we'd take them to the radio station, and then we'd take them to the venue. And so I used to be I would contract to set up all the itinerary for artists coming. And I worked with amazing artists, Aalia, Genuine. I worked with 550 Music, so I got to work with some incredible entertainers back in the day. Had some great experiences, and then I kind of moved into more corporate stuff for a while. And then now I'm back in media again after all these years.
After all these years, and you may know that I also have a background in music. I'm curious how you got into that entertainment business. Like, why was that a particular business that you decided to start?
Okay, yeah, thank you. So as I said, I'm really good at sales. So ultimately also promotion. I understood promotion. I understood marketing very well. And so that's, and you know, even just understanding how artists present themselves and being able to see things. So my very first job was really actually working for a company called West Coast Promotions. And then, so I worked under that CEO until he tried to unfortunately do some very not cool things. And then I decided I didn't want to work for him anymore. And I'm like, and again, I was like, I can do this myself. I started going to conferences, the same thing I do in the film world today. My husband and I are always prevalent. We're prevalent at Cannes Film Festival, Toronto Film Festival. Back in my music days, I was at, well, now that's Ultra. I see all the Ultra stuff going on right now. Shout out to the Ultra people, but it was WMC, Winter Music Conference, back in my day. And I would fly myself out there and get the clients and come back with all the demos. And, like, I just always was never afraid to put myself out there to do what I needed to do to get done. And when we talk about principles of success, Frederick, you know that's part of it.
No, absolutely. Being able to put yourself out there. And it sounds like one of the things that you kind of developed was, we have a lot of hustle mentality, right? But there's a raising of the stakes that's necessary when you go all in, when you're fully committed to this new direction. And so you really show that when you're able to make that commitment, you can make things happen for yourself and for your life. I wanted to ask you about when you had the Metro PCS, your own store. You mentioned the fact that you were doing things differently, the way that you did business. Can you share an instance or a particular strategy or something that you did that was unique to you, and maybe it's something that you carried over into other businesses where you lead your team?
Yeah,
and deal with your clients, your customers?
Absolutely. I will. I'm writing something down so I don't forget what I'm going to tell you, but something that you just said. So technically we started with one Metro PCS, but by the time I actually got out of and exited the businesses, there were about 30 stores. So
Wow.
we grew it, and we were one of the leading dealers and we were one of the first. We were actually one of the 10 dealers allowed to launch in Los Angeles, which was incredible. But anyway, so to answering your question, so with regards to things that I did differently, yes, once again, it was that marketing, understanding psychology of people as a consumer. I always put myself in place of it as well. And I thought, just as a consumer, a real true consumer, what are things that matter to me? And if I didn't always have the answer, I went outside of myself to find out from other people. But one of the things is, of course, Metro PCS really thrived during the economic recessions because it saved people money. When I was able to put on a flyer, because a lot of people think just putting a price is going to help you. Sometimes you have to craft it in a way that says, no, this is the number. So if I say I'm going to save you $1,200 a year, for some people, especially during the economic crisis, paying $100 a month, $12,000 a year at minimum, which we know it was more than that suddenly becomes this visual interpretation of what I can do for you and how I'm trying to serve you through my business. The other thing I also did is I really looked to provide incentives with my team, as well as really train them to understand also that psychology. I can't know everything myself. I have to teach. I have to guide them. So an example of that would be, like, aside from monetary, you do want to make your people compete a little bit. It's good. It's healthy. Make it healthy. Give them a reason to work hard. Make them feel that they have a stake. Because so many people just feel like, well, no matter how hard I work, I'm only going to make this per hour. Well, I've been a person living paycheck to paycheck. If you can give me an opportunity to make a little bit more, I'm going to take it. And that's what that opportunity was for those employees, right? Which hopefully all of them were like it, since it's all sales positions. But secondly, in that teaching, I want to share something, even in how we do business, right? I'm going to even take this further to my husband, who's an attorney, a very successful and film executive producer. When my customers, like, say, I observe them and then I would give them feedback. So I remember one time watching a guy come up, and my employee just starts spouting off, oh, this phone does this, and it does this, and it does that, and and I'm like, and I'm watching her, and then the guy, I'm looking at his face, and he's kind of overwhelmed, and he's just like, oh, okay, great. And she's like, would you, and she lost the deal because she scared him off, right? So I went over to her afterwards and I said, listen, I really appreciate that you want to tell him about the phone, but your first question should be, what do you like in your phone? What are you looking for? Because if you just start telling them the moon, the stars, and everything else, what if they don't want the moon and the stars? What if they're just very simply looking for one thing? Or more importantly, you could focus on a feature, if you're trying to sell it, that it has what they're looking for. Again, so things like that were very, crucial to giving them that guidance. And funny enough, my husband, he'll have potential clients call up, and he did that. He did that exact same thing. Well, I do this, and I can do this. And I'm like, babe, you do so much. For you to tell the potential client off the bat, you're at the point, you need to ask first, or not you need, I take that word. I would encourage you, I told them, to maybe first identify what they want. And it's funny that you even say that, because my husband has come from a hustle background, hustle, hustle, hustle. And I'm like, that's what I meant by, you can relax. You now you don't have to feel like, you're chasing this, but you can relax now. You can sit back and ask somebody, what is it that you're looking for? Aside from the fact that you and I both know that's good business talk, right? Like that. So, and then the last thing I want to tell you for my customers. So very quickly, I held all of my team accountable. I loved them. I had their backs. All of our stores. I mean, I'd had customers that people had threatened to throw stuff at them. Of course, I understand difficult customers, but I still want my customers to know that they can be heard, that if they have an issue, I don't want them. So a lot of people go into a store and say, I want to talk to the manager, and somebody may walk out, right? But the way that I approached it, and this was a message not only for my employees, but for my customers, but for my employees, I would put big signs on the wall that said, if you have a problem, you can call and leave a message with your issue on this number. And I kid you not, the feedback was, at least you're giving me an option outside of the employees right there. And I feel like I'm providing you this very big, very thing, letting you know I care about your thoughts. I care about how you feel. I care about your experience. Right.
Yeah.
And so things like that made a difference. And it made my team more accountable, because now they knew they couldn't gatekeep the information in an effort to keep it from me, in case they were kind of being unpleasant with our customers, right? So that's a couple examples of what I'm talking about. Hopefully that helps.
No, first of all, I think it's really great. It's funny how fundamentally everything you say makes perfect sense, and yet we see examples of companies over and over again that just don't follow these practices, right? We see salespeople. So one of the things that I like to do is that I will embrace the sales process. You have people that are pitching you for different things. So sometimes I'll sign up. I'll book a call. I want to watch and observe how they're doing things. And it's funny how people who can be selling you marketing or sales services, agencies or whatever, are really bad at it. They do a lot of the fundamental things. They don't follow up. They don't ask the right questions. They don't really seem engaging. It's for me, it can be encouraging. I can say, oh, I can do better than this, or we can do better than that. But it's funny how you really put those things into place. You are actively teaching people, and the results show. To go from 1 to 30 stores is not a fluke, right? So clearly, you know what you're doing, right? So there's lots of, but I just wanted to commend you for that, because I think that I wanted to highlight that for the audience, because I think sometimes we can say, oh, well, that's easy. Well, who doesn't do that? But there are fundamentally sometimes that people don't realize we have these default modes that we fall into. When you feel like I have to prove that I have the best product or service, or I've got to, I don't want people to know, I don't want people to complain even, right? But having a place to be able to complain is actually a service to people. Because sometimes it's not even about you, but you can't fix it if you don't know what's going on. Anyway, I want to ask a question, but I wanted to commend you for that part of it as well. I'm curious because I do want to talk about what you and your husband have done together, but I'm curious how you guys met and got together in the first place.
We are a product of Match.com, and wow. I love, but see, again, I mean, I'm a Gen Xer. I've been using internet for both platonic business and romantic, whatever, dating since 1999. I still get the wow. But again, kind of going back to the cancer experience, right? All these people that I've met on Clubhouse, right? All these people, then a lot of us have actually met in person. So to me, it's no surprise, but yes, we are a product of Match. Even though our story is kind of funny, because I actually stepping into my purpose always, when I went on there, I went in with the mindset of, I'm just looking for somebody to date, hang out with, somebody who might want to have dinner and have some good conversation. That's really genuinely all I was looking for. I was just coming out literally of the marriage, where the marriage was done before it was officially done. But, I wasn't like, out trying to be in the streets, but again, I know I'm a cool person. Why would I not want to have good company with somebody and maybe have chemistry? Maybe not, but at least have that opportunity. And so I went on and I looked up two things that I knew I didn't. Well, no, I'm gonna leave the second one out because people are gonna think I'm bad. But I looked for music. I looked for the keyword music, and we met, and we never stopped dating after that. 2 years later we got married, and we share one daughter together, and then he's helped me raise my other ones since 2014. So it's been great.
That's really awesome. And you alluded to the fact that your husband is an attorney, but he also is in the entertainment industry as a producer of films, and he actually has done some pretty successful films as well. What's that process been like in terms of supporting him? You get to do some cool things, go to some cool places, and meet some cool people. But what has that process been like? And are there any lessons that you've learned? Because you're back in the entertainment industry, but are there any lessons that you learned that maybe apply to business overall, even the way that you do business in particular?
Yes. So first of all, yes, Joseph is an entertainment attorney, and more now an executive. Like, I think that I went to law school also to become an entertainment attorney, by the way, which is funny. And I do not practice, don't want to practice, but I love that him and I can speak the same language. When you actually go to, no differently, the medical school has their dictionary, law school has their dictionary. So when we speak on things, we do understand, especially contractual law, which is a lot of what we're dealing with, because we're more in the strategic financing. We bring financing to films. We offer financing to certain films. So a lot of what it's not him. I actually have more producer boots on the ground and like organizing, cameramen and directors and ADs and all that. He's actually more the high level, and he's more, up in the high rank. So imagine Tom Cruise when he was yelling at all the people about how he's on the phone with the insurance company and the guilds every night. That was my husband. That's my husband. Like, he's the one really keeping everything together as it happens. And ironically enough, the last 3 years since the pandemic has happened have been the busiest of his entire career,
Wow.
which speaks to his ability to get things done, and what we're doing clearly is right. It's that formula. So when him and I, so I'd left my last marriage, I knew I was going to go back into the creative space. I had already been wanting to write my first novel, and I was at a stage in my life when I could really do what I wanted when we got married. And I chose to, for two reasons. Not only because I was always drawn to entertainment. I actually have my family, I do have a lot of entertainment in my family, both music as well as film, believe it or not. So there was kind of this, this natural draw to media, arts, performance, expression. Expression is really what I love about it, and the way that art heals and helps and provides representation. So the other thing that was important to me, Frederick, and I'm going to kind of say this because I think it's a little sad. So my husband and I, because I'm in the same vein, we do get to go to the film festivals together, and we do a lot of that. Sometimes I won't go, but if I don't, it's by choice. And I love that my husband supports that. But what's great is when I'm out there with him, a lot of the guys, they're like, okay, so some guys are like, thank God I'm leaving my wife at home. I know. They're like, my wife doesn't want to be here. She doesn't need to be here. But what I love about, yet they always look at Joseph and I, and they're always in awe. They're like, we love your guys' relationship. It's so clear that you support one another. You guys are just this power couple. And I think they fail to understand that if they did have that same situation, it can be a really cool experience. Because I did want to go into a business that not only was what I wanted to be true to, but also did bring me to a degree with my husband, because we work together, but we kind of do it in this way that like we kind of still work separately, right? Like I have my own office and he has his thing. So it's beautiful because we actually get to have this experience together, but I'm not infringing on him, like I don't, it's just, it works really well. I think that some people don't see how, like if I would have gone into real estate and then I was going to the real estate conferences and then he's going to the film, you see a lot of couples that they're missing each other. That's what I'm trying to say. They
Mm-hmm.
miss each other. And I
Mm-hmm.
get to actually have this journey with my husband. And I was only going to accept a husband that I felt I was building something with. So
Mm-hmm.
it all has worked out really well. And my lesson, so going back even to like what I said, what I did when I was younger, like especially in entertainment, oh yeah, I've learned so much more. Now I see, and I said this word before, formula,
Mm-hmm.
recipe, whatever you want to call it, right? If I go into the kitchen and I try to bake a cake and I don't put in the right ingredients, I'm going to get a cake all right. It might not taste good, it might not look good, and it might be horrible, but that's not the kind of cake I
Right.
want. So what I
Right.
have learned is that the formula exists to whatever it is that you're creating. And I want to make sure I'm focusing on the right parts of that formula. So, I talked earlier about how my family didn't believe that friends, and this and that. Well, they didn't understand truly the value of networking and what that does. And
Mm-hmm.
also in any industry that you want to be in, the other reason that we actually are at all the important events that we can and need to be at is because when you're seen, people, more things happen. Even if we want to win the lottery, we still got to get up off the couch and go buy a ticket, right? So not as much can get done from inside the house. So for us, part of the formula has been to be out in the world, for people to know who we are, to see our
Mm-hmm.
faces, to know that we are prominent figures on the scene doing incredible things. You want to be part of this journey? Fantastic. Join us. You don't? That's cool too. But
Mm-hmm.
it goes back to that marketing aspect of, like there's that 3-foot rule almost, whenever anybody you're within 3 feet of, give them, a card or give them something that tells them about you or your business. And when you're networking in these large and these environments where people converge from all over the world in your industry, South by Southwest, I show up with my press credentials. I'm looking for the story. I'm looking for those connections. And I just have to tell you that being open to all of those has seemingly put me in the right place at the right time, doing the right things with the right people.
I love that. I love that. I love the fact that you're intentional about creating this type of relationship with your husband, and I think that in the best ways, when we are really building those relationships, right? To take a side note, you talked about networking, right? So many people talk about networking and thinking it's just about getting out there, but it's really about building relationships. But on that parallel, had you not built a relationship with your husband, that solid foundation of a relationship with your husband, then that also doesn't translate to some of the other relationships you have, because part of the power that you have is in how powerful you are together, and being able to do what you do, create this combustible mix, right, of your superpower and his superpower, and being able to combine those two things together, and it draws you closer together, which I think is really, really cool, because a lot of the success that people are chasing actually pulls them apart from the people that they
Yes.
want to be the most, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And I mean, and that's something that I think, I love that you say that, because yes, I mean, and then just take it to what you said, that second word, collaboration, like, learning
Mm,
in music, like there's a reason that I've always told my team, and I've always said, like, even when I had my Metro stores, every year I'd have a holiday party. And I remember telling my ex-husband, this is important, building that culture, making everyone not feel isolated. You're this store, you're that store. No, we got to come together. They all have to feel that there's this cross collaboration, there's a team effort, and how you work together and how you support one another. So, moving to what we do now, of course, we do it. Collaboration is everything. And there's a reason why music artists,
I'm here.
yeah, I was gonna say, there's a reason why like Drake is on every, song, right? Or Nicki Minaj at one point, or Cardi B. The reason why they do that is because collaboration is key. And so you develop this network, and you may not work with all of them, but at least they exist. And then you develop those relationships. And then when there is an opportunity to collaborate, you do. And hopefully it's very successful. But there's so much, there's patience to what we do. There's finding what works and then keep doing that, right? Those principles of success, and and just look, being smart. Like working hard, but working smart is for sure a key thing for us. You know, it's
Right.
even in just our business and the way we do business. Like I still live with chronic diseases. I am a 3-time cancer survivor. I have 2 autoimmune diseases, a condition that is becoming more popular more recently, or I guess more people are aware of it, POTS, which is postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. So what that means is I literally walk around a lot of times feeling like I'm having a heart attack. Um,
Wow.
but I'm not. And it's so I have these conditions that mean I work really hard, but I have to be smart because I have to plan for time to give the mental and physical and spiritual chance, an opportunity, or body, a chance to recharge. And I do that with my husband. I do that by myself. You know, all these things that I engage to just continue doing what we're doing in the best way, hopefully.
I have so many more questions, but I want to be respectful of your time as we're moving close to to wrapping up. So what I want to ask you is this around that last point, because you've navigated so many ups and downs, you've had a lot of highs and extreme lows. And you even talked about with your health now, right? What is one of the tools or skills that you've developed? Is a framework that you use to be able to stay focused and to be able to manage, to thrive, if you will, through those stressful ups and downs that you're going to inevitably experience as an entrepreneur, maybe even daily, right? So, how do you navigate those things?
Oh, I love that question. Thank you. Um, and by the way, for your audience, I know I talk a lot. I'm sorry. I hope what I've said is bringing value to people out there. I know it is to somebody because I know it. I know when I share, people appreciate that. So thank you for allowing me to share myself with your audience. Um, I My first novel is called Tough Love. And funny enough, we pulled
Mm,
it off. We're actually going to be re-releasing it. We're doing a little polish of it, second edition, and re-releasing it. And this book was the book where I really, when I was writing it, it's a biographical fiction novel about my life, a portion, the end of my last marriage as I moved into the phase, uh, mostly that I'm in now, and or at least leading up to it. And again, leaving that victim mindset behind.
mm,
It was December 2013. I was in the middle of a very, very toxic relationship with my ex-husband at the time. There was physical abuse involved. It was just, there was infidelity that had happened. And I was so unhappy. And I was trying so hard to keep it together. That's the thing. Strong people do that. We keep a smile when everything inside of us is breaking.
mm,
But I got tired of that because 2 things. Somebody reminded me, I would always tell people would always say to me, life is short. And I'd say, yes, but it's terribly long if you're miserable. And then, but somebody told me a saying that really made so much impact because I was a mother of 3 children at that time. And they said, children do not grow up to do what you say, they grow up to do what you did. Right. And so
mm,
in that moment, I had to take
mm,
responsibility. I had to take accountability. I had to stop living in excuses. And so that book, Journeys, or is a glimpse into my journey, my internal journey of saying, wait, can I curse? Can I curse? No, wait, I know you're not like, forget this shit, like I don't deserve this. And I am not fighting for my life for this, right? I was already in this journey
mm,
because in December 2013, the doctor called and said, I'm sorry, your cancer has returned. And in that
mm,
moment, I knew that I had allowed it to happen. I had allowed, because they would always say stress is like opening a window and saying, come on back in. Like everything that I was doing was allowing this impact to happen. I wasn't fighting the way I knew how to fight. And so
right.
once I left that behind, I got out of that, and it it just became this change. And I kind of feel bad because I'm forgetting the second part of your question. Shoot. The because I knew I was talking about that, and then you said that there was a second part to the question that you asked. I'm sorry, Frederick. What was it? Forgive
It's,
me.
it's just about navigating. You're actually talking. You're actually answering it. Just navigate. How do you navigate all those ups and downs? And so,
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
yes, 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 yes. So, I mean, again, it's being grateful, right? It's being grateful because you can't appreciate the mountaintops until you've been to the deepest of the lowest valley. And all of those little pieces growing up, I was told these amazing things: where there is a will, there is a way. Where, I don't give up. I'm not a quitter. And so in that, it just became this progressive journey of empowering myself. People asked me when I wrote my novel, was it very cathartic for you? Was it healing for you? And I said, no, because I wrote it from a place of empowerment. I am in control of my narrative. I'm going to share with the world what happened to me. And hopefully this will empower someone else. So to go, back to that, it's just building on those blocks of, I am worthy. I think I've shared this before. My husband, Joseph Lanius, is an incredible man. I watched him do something with our 6-year-old daughter when she was born. I would watch him. Oh God, I get a little emotional. He would always put her in front of the mirror, and she's like 3 weeks old, for a month old, 2 months old, every time he'd sit her in front of the mirror, and he'd say, I am beautiful. I am strong. I am courageous. And I will say that I looked at my daughter thinking how beautiful that she will get the opportunity to have that belief system instilled in you from day one.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, that day came. Those days came for me when I started to look in the mirror and say, I am beautiful. I am strong. I am courageous. I never deserved what happened to me, but I am here in spite of it. I can go on, and if anything, I'm going to serve as a representation to fighters out there to let them know that you don't have to be the victim in your story anymore, right? Like, to the filmmakers who decided the end wasn't good enough and decided the end was going to be better. I am a writer, but we are all writing our stories. And I've decided that I want the end of my story to be better than it was coming out to be. So for me, that's intentional, and that's purposeful, and that's how I walk with it today. So motivation is pain management. Like, motivation for me every single day, when people say, how do you deal with your physical limitations and still do what you do? I let them know motivation for me is pain management. When I'm happy with what I'm doing and I know that I'm working towards something that is incredible and amazing, I find the energy, I find the inspiration, and it's largely from all the responses and feedback that I get. Just like you, I'm sure when you hear those messages from the way that you're helping other people live a more quality of life, like, that's what I'm here to do. I mean, if there's one thing I will just say is I so enjoy serving the world the way that I do.
I couldn't think of a more beautiful and appropriate way to wrap up our conversation together. I'm so grateful to have had you here, Aalia, sharing your story. So many of the people, I think, are going to be inspired and touched by your story and what you shared through all the different messages, because I think you had so many gems that you've given to us today. Tell people where they can connect with you if they want to learn more about you, if they want to learn how they can work with you, or whatever the case may be. Where can people find you?
Well, thank you so much. And Frederick, by the way, you're amazing. I love all that you're doing. I'm so proud. I meant to tell you, I loved your intro too. This is so cool. So Aalia _unsugarcoated on IG. If you look for me, info at unsugarcoatedmedia.com or unsugarcoatedmedia.com, all one word, is the best place to message us or to sign up for our newsletters, stay in the know of what we're doing. And and then, we have Unsugarcoated with Aalia. I have a podcast, a social good talk podcast that we produce and host as well. But more than anything, I hope people just continuing to support you and what you're doing, because it's incredible. I know it brings such value, and it's been such a pleasure to actually have this time with you today, Frederick. Thank you so much.
Awesome. I appreciate the kind words. That being said, I want to thank everybody else who stopped by for a second, for a minute. Those of you who commented and shared, especially Martina, and those of you as well who dropped by for a second. Really hope this was valuable for you. That's why we're here, to be able to inspire and empower people on their journey, entrepreneurially and otherwise. For Aalia Lanius, I am Frederick Douglass Bussey. This has been Power Lunch. Ever forward. Awesome. Awesome. Great job.